Gather round, my friends. It is time to share my life's work. It has taken me many years of careful study, traveling, and first-hand combat experience to come before you today at this place to tell you the tale of the greatest menace to the north of the Empire that we have seen in many a day. The legend of Azhag the Slaughterer. One of the greatest old war bosses the old world has ever seen. Through my extensive research and my own experiences in battle against this monster, I can tell you the story of what happened and why I became fascinated by this orc. By all purposes, he was just an orc, until something changed him. From a simple warlord to one of the most devastating enemies we have seen in this fair country. A threat to both the Kislev and the Empire. So, my friends, let us start at the beginning, in Troll Country, where we find Azhag, well, doing what orcs do best, fighting. Of course, his early days are not well known, but I have gathered some information from which we can at least start our story. From the scouts I found in Troll Country, I visited a site where a battle took place between the Greenskins and the Warriors of Chaos. This may be where it started for Azhag, and where his life turned. From what the scouts told me, there was a large fight. We found only a few Chaos worshippers and a lot of Greenskins. Judging from what I read of the battle, the Greenskins were horribly outclassed by a strong Chaos army full of warriors, Chaos Spawn, and a Fire Mage. The fight was brutal, with skulls of corpses centered on top of a hill. The dead were long since gone, but marks and damage to the ground could still be seen. Clearly there was a large clash between the two armies. Little tactical thinking, just brute strength and savagery. The raw savagery of the Greenskins versus the arrogance of Chaos. Around one area, the scouts had found warriors in the odd Chaos Spawn. They thought this might have been where a powerful orc leader was fighting. From the timeline of events, I believe this was Azhag. From the remains, it was clear he was a ruthless killer. They walked me through the field, telling me of the goblins that had run away from the fight, but scorch marks had marred the earth, making it as black as charcoal. It looked like a column of fire had incinerated here. Not much left but the old bit of rusty metal. As this was all speculation, but the scouts were convinced and showed me some more charred ground. Whatever happened here, though, was clearly a crushing defeat. The thought of burning to death in such a terrible way made me tremble. I looked around at this land, trying to picture the battle. After everything had happened at this skirmish, I feared how the coming months would be different for Kislev. The scouts told me the defeated army mostly went towards the ruined city of Tolkien, a place impossible to escape. The labyrinth of tunnels which the dwarves had long since left. All that was left there were Chaos worshippers, who knows what else. The people I talked with rarely go down there, but they told me of legends of buried treasure, guarded by huge Chaos trolls. I believe down in these depths, Azhag found something no one could expect to find on their own in the dark maze. How many Chaos worshippers he killed down there, we shall never know. What is certain is that Greenskins are masters at survival. They can go for days without food, and living underground was not a problem. We shall never know how long he looked for a way out. This was where he most likely found the crown. He was wearing it when I saw him. Perhaps it was guarded by monsters, trolls perhaps, protecting this rare artifact hidden deep in the tunnels. After looking through the legends, this relic might well be the Crown of Nagash. A long-lost item which belonged to the Lich Lord Nagash, one of the greatest necromancers in all of history. A magical item of devastating power, infused with his own will. Inside twirled the dark powers of its master, so as Azhag made its way through numerous foes, he came across this magical item, not fully knowing what he had found. Azhag quickly became twisted and fell under the power of his new headpiece. This crown was not just an artifact, it was alive. I know it sounds like I'm delirious, but listen as I tell you what happened. Under the command of the crown, it had now imbued its new victim with the information of how to get out. Azhag ran off down the dark corridors, followed by orcs and goblins alike. For the war boss was leader, and no one wanted to face the wrath of a strange warlord. The crown led Azhag out and back into the light. The crown dominated Azhag. It underestimated the orc, assumed he was but a simpleton. It never, ever had complete control of him, unable to break Azhag's stubborn mind. They ventured east, further into the lands of Kislev, and here we get our first solid information. I was in these lands helping out when I began to hear stories about this Azhag. Kislev was the first to notice something. A veteran of one of these first fights against humans told me a harrowing tale. They had been told to hunt down a new orc war boss in the north, who was coming into the lands and gathering a large horde. Nothing new, this region had been marred by war for centuries. He gathered an army to put down this menace. As the Greenskins came over the hill, I started to worry. This group of Greenskins was the largest I'd ever seen. Then we saw him on a huge wyvern, with a wingspan the likes of which I have never seen. A huge green giant squashed my friends before me, killing them all instantly. Strange purple magic pulled me off my feet and through my body. I have never been so scared. Purple, I interjected. This was confusing. There's not an orc spell I know that is purple. Aye, it was purple, he said. It is not something I will ever forget. This was unnerving. The only spell that matched that description was the purple sun of Xerxes. And that only came from the lore of death, by Sigmar. How did the Greenskins have that spell? How did they know such arcane knowledge? I learned all I could as the veteran continued his story. The Greenskins came around behind him, charging. It looked like he had no escape. This was not the orc tactics he was used to. His army was perfectly catered to kill the Kislev. This was not from the mind of a simple orc war boss. I traveled Kislev just behind this new menace and talked to everyone I could find. I learned much about his tactics from the stories on accounts of the region. Azhag methodically attacked a fort in Kislev. Survivors of the massacre said that they had manned the walls supported by a second rank inside, and reinforcements up the hill. I could scarcely believe they were forts I read and the people I spoke to. This war boss sent his forces in precise and organized waves. His first line was night goblins to get a foothold on the walls with ladders. They aimed to destroy the tower so he could bring up his second line. The soldiers started to fight on the walls as the next group of huge black orcs and bigots advanced. Most orcs would just rush the wall with everything they had. No. This was planned. I deduced it was the crown guiding Azhag in the techniques of warfare and leading to his conquests on their way through Kislev. Reading more of the reports, they breached the gate and made a gigantic hole in the solid stone wall. With the gates breached, the real attack began. As the orc magic cleared the way for another wave, the rock lobbers decimated the battlements. The men were terrified by the full frontal assault. Another group of monsters moved the gap. Greenskins flooded through the gap in the wall. Their bodies made bruised, and minds fraught with grief. But a strange sort of nationalism united the countrymen. Yet pride, though, can only take you so far. They had no idea what they were up against. An orc with power for beyond the grave. When they told me how they defended the hold as Azhag charged in, it was curious to me why an orc, the only orc known for strategy, would just rush in like that. Perhaps the necromancer's soul could not suppress all the orc in Azhag. His forces overwhelmed the fort. As what was left of the countrymen retreated up the hill, one despondent soldier remarked, "They were unrelenting. Our lines melted away as they came through the fort from everywhere. I have fought the green time, but before this was not like anything I'd witnessed before. As I looked over my dead comrades, I knew I had to warn all of Kislev before it was too late. This is not an ordinary greenskin invasion. I fear the worst for my people. This could be the end, as we all know it." As I look back now, was there more I could do to help to convince Kislev that this was a real threat? Did I not do enough to prevent catastrophe? Was it my fault they were slaughtered? I had reported my findings to the various Kislev armies and to the Empire's settlements in the north, but they just scoffed at me. The army said it was just cowards speak. "Oh, it was just a large warband. They won't make it further south," they claimed. During my venture in the northern province of Ostermark, part of my pilgrimage to warn the Empire of the dire situation, news reached me of another attack, this time on Kislev itself. Azhag was getting closer to the heart of the Empire. I hurried to Ostermark, hoping to warn them before the horde barreled through. But by the time I got to the main center, it was barren. In the rubble, I found a few survivors who told me the same old story. A huge orc riding a wyvern with a huge horde and tail, leaving nothing but the destruction in their wake. These was the first reports of the siege towers they made. They helped augment the destruction of the walls, yet did not change the war boss's old strategy of sending specialized groups in waves. They picked this force's defenses apart with catapults. It was like clockwork, establishing a foothold on the battlements and then bringing up the next rank. With the information I had gathered, I had an understanding that this Azhag was now something different. An unholy marriage of a long-lost necromancer's power and the brute strength of an orc. A deadly mix that could see the north swollen up by this horde. When the inevitable I had been preaching for so long finally happened, the citizenry of Kislev defended their capital with all they had. Alas, as we all know, it was not enough. Very few people escaped the assault on Kislev. From a tactical point of view, Azhag was brilliant. When I managed to reach the corpse of the city, human remains were piled high, but hardly any greenskins could be seen. A broken gate and torn up battlements were the only sign of any greenskin casualties. One girl who had watched the brief battle before her family escaped had witnessed her father charged on his horse at a group of huge orcs clad in iron before he was slaughtered. I could not find many survivors to give me the effects of the battle. One person did mention that they saw the orc leader charge his wyvern into fights. I saw a weakness. This brash and often foolhardy charge was very orc-like. The crown was losing its grip over Azhag. We could exploit this and destroy both of the hoarded entities in the process. As I walked around the ruins of the courtyard and up the hill to the main square, glancing around at the spent cartridges that lined the floor, I sent my scouts ahead to warn the Empire's towns, but it was too late. One young man returned and claimed witness to a siege of one of those smaller hamlets. Startled, I rode back into the Empire as fast as I could to try to get ahead of Azhag's horde and warn the people of the coming doom. Just as I had predicted, the worst had happened. Azhag had reached the Empire. Like Kislev before them, my words of warning came on deaf ears. They wouldn't listen until his army was bearing down on them. By then it was far too late. With towers up front, Azhag launched his army forward against the strongest garrison yet. Again, The few survivors I found spoke of their foolhardy confidence they felt before they were overrun by the Horde. Conceptions of superiority were not enough to save their families. They spoke in hushed tones of the sheer terror this horror instilled in their hearts as they rampaged around them. Once again, night goblins took the battlements, and black orcs pushed into the center of their homes. The defenders held the line as best they could, but like so many times before, it was not enough. With Azhag behind them, these goblins knew no fear. Their countless victories emboldened them, turning them into killing machines, the likes of which I would not wish upon any man. They followed their war boss to the ends of the earth, no matter how unorthodox Azhag was. With trolls close behind, they spread all through the town like a disease, destroying all in their path. This confirmed my suspicions yet again. Through his victories, Azhag had become more and more bold. I had a most ingenious idea. When the crown's grip loosened, Azhag's ties to the necromancer could be cut. Then, and only then, could we destroy this blight on our land once and for all. I joined an army making its way through Ulsterland. Not soon after my arrival, we happened on some goblins near a large hill. The ensuing fight would now and forever mar this place as Butcher's Hill. I could not believe my eyes when I saw, above the goblins, was a huge orc riding a wyvern. I had finally seen him. Azhag, the Slaughterer. The orcs glowed with unholy light as the air crackled with necromantic energy. Knowing the dangers of this beast, I rushed to the general to warn him. This was the menace I had told him about numerous times. I pleaded with him to let me take the lead. He ignored me. Shaking his head in disregard, he ordered his men to line up. I was scared. Something was very, very wrong. I could feel it in the aether. My knights stood next to me stoically, unmoved. They had heard my grave warnings, but were equally as uninterested as their general. We moved up and took our position at the back of the army. With a wave, the general signaled the charge. The lines collapsed on the greenskins. A terrible scream rang out as the wyvern steed attacked. A rallying cry came like a roar from some beast from the greenskins. I looked around. There was something at the tree line. I saw Azhag cast his death spells, and orc magic came into the fight, decimating our first wave. Bodies, both dead and alive, flew all around from the explosion of energy, the orc shaman remaining out of our sight. The power shook the ground and rocked us all to our very core. Undeterred at the carnage, the knights tried once more to break the front line, confident they could destroy the goblins. From my position at the deck, I saw the trees come alive with orcs and goblins alike. They came in swiftly from both flanks, collapsing on the rear of the troops and closing off a deadly pincer. We had been sucked into a trap the general knew no orc could have planned. I watched furiously as I saw the tide come between the mounds, charging into the rear of our troops. The knights tried to hold me back as I looked over my shoulder. Another force had cut us off from the rear. As we rallied to repel the attack from all sides, I spied the war boss and stopped dead in my tracks. Azhag had flown up and away from the battle. He was not even looking at it. He seemed locked in position, as if in a trance. Frozen on top of his mount, he sat there, staring off into the distance. The battle roared on beneath him, yet, as the Greenskins destroyed the army of the Empire, he did not seem to notice. Knowing the battle was lost, I collected my thoughts and my men, and we retreated to Osterwald. The second we reached the city, I went straight to the barracks, and I confronted the sitting general and told him what I had told so many before. I was relieved when he believed me. Between the two of us, we drew up a plan to stop this menace right here. With a grand theologist, we assembled a grand army full of elite troops, rockets, missile units, and a few regiments of Knights Panther. With the town burning from the barrage of Azhag the Slaughterer, as my own men had called him, we set off. His demise, the only thing on our minds. The orc came into view. This time, there would be no brash charges or stands. We knew how to kill him. The men on all his tactics. There would be no trickery now. More rockets hit home. I could smell the burning flesh of the beasts. I smiled. The tide had finally turned. Troops stood valiantly, watching the blaze. The Knights Panther on their right and rear itched for battle. As our force made their final preparations for battle, I sent out a prayer, hoping some god, any god, was listening. Still more greenskins charged up the hill, Azhag in the lead. A force hit our left flank, but we were prepared and quickly routed them. Reassembling, the orc magic from the horde hit us again, staggering our troops. Rifle fire spat out. Azhag launched his magic. Things started to go sour. The arcane magic disrupted our first line. I ordered them to pull back, but by this point we had already lost so many of them. The lead waves of the enemy hit our first rank as they retreated. Trying to make sense of the carnage, I suddenly spied Azhag. He crushed some of the riflemen before me. The magic looked to be weakening. This was our chance. I ordered the Knights Panther behind me to charge the warlord. With a giant spider rampaging, I focused my attention at moving troops around me. We had to take advantage while Azhag was distracted. Seeing the front line start to crumble, a warrior of Sigmar and our leader charged into the Black Orcs, bringing his own magic to the front line. Then I saw the moment. Azhag launched himself at the Knights Panther at the back. I smiled. He had fallen for the trap. I knew the orc and Azhag would see this as a challenge, and, unable to defy his instincts, attempt to annihilate them. As soon as he landed, all the Knights Panther collapsed upon him. I saw Azhag become terrified. He tried to flee, but I ordered some more of the Knights Panther to block his retreat. This was our time to rid the old world of this monster. The greenskins started to rout, but the Black Orcs were not so easily phased. As they fought on, I ordered my rifle units to target them with volleys, just as the warrior of Sigmar charged in, casting his magic. A huge roar echoed across the land. I looked up to see a most wonderful sight. Azhag had fallen, finally brought to an end by the Knights Panther. I fell to my knees exhausted as the greenskins, realizing their leader was slain, turned and ran. I staggered over to the corpse of the wyvern and looked upon what was left of the menace I had spent so much time trekking. Upon seeing his body, I thought about all the lives the monster had taken, and I wept. A Grand Theologist walked over and saw me weeping. He comforted me by putting a hand on my shoulder while I gathered my emotions. With his staff, he lifted the crown of sorcery and put it in a chest which he had brought with him. I could feel the power of the crown calling out to me. As the Theologist started casting binding spells on the chest, all I could hear was a hum. He nodded to me and shook my hand. I stood, and together we brought the crown back to Aldorf, where it is now locked away, guarded by magic and men. I hope it will never see the light of day again, for it is too dangerous for any man or orc to wield. As I finish my story, let us remember one important lesson. We should never underestimate our enemy, for another Azhag might be out there, ready to bring this old world to ruin.